Now on this video we're going to try to seal up this YETMAN Honda gas tank using a CASWELL gas tank sealer. Now because this is the first time I've used this product, and this is a tank that belongs to Chuck Dearborn, it's his YETMAN Honda, and we had some really neat footage of it that we just posted on YouTube at the end of the 67 Canadian National Grand Prix. Now it says on the package, and I read the directions very carefully, again because it's the first time I've used this, permanently seals aluminum, fiberglass and plastic tanks. And just to look at the box, I'm not sure what Chuck paid for this. I'm not sure, but of course it's available online, and I want to hopefully put all that information out there just for somebody else. Now it says it comes in different colors here. Well, I don't know about if I need to have the color inside the tank, but there are generic directions. I have the directions I downloaded offline, and of course it says to read carefully, which we did. There's two products. Now when I spoke to Chuck when he was here, we had discussed this project many times, and he had measured the volume of that tank, or had it measured, as about 3 gallons, which would mean we're going to use half of each one when we mix up the resin to this material, this tank sealing material. So obviously you need any product, and I know this from having used epoxies for about 40 years, any product that's basically 2 to 1. It's not an ultra critical mix. If you're doing a product where the mix ratio is 17.6 to 1, you got to do it with a gram scale. This we basically can eyeball, or we could take a little glass cup and measure it up, but we're basically going to use half of this material to do the tank seal. Now, as I'm going to exactly what the directions say to do, there's the directions for aluminum tank, a steel tank, or in this case a fiberglass tank are very different. So I know from many years of experience using epoxies, using different products, and I want to just let everybody take a look inside. It's kind of gritty and rusty in there, but what they tell you to do is put some soapy water. In this case we have simple green. I would say maybe a pint or so of simple green would be enough. And then to stick some drywall screws, and again I'm going right by the directions, put them right in the tank, put the lid back on, and obviously I won't let the camera run for 10 minutes, but I'll do this for at least 10 minutes. This tank has a leak in it, and the leak is right here. It's a crack from some damage that we're going to cosmetically paint and fix the whole tank. But before we do any cosmetic work, needless to say, you want to get it that it doesn't leak. Now the drywall screws, they kind of scratch up the inside of the tank. In fact, the petcock's on. We ought to shut it off. And what this would do is loosen any rough areas in there. Now they tell you can use acetone instead of the simple green or Dawn. The only problem with acetone around old fiberglass I've found in the past, if you leave acetone in a tank even a few minutes too long, it can just soften or melt the tank. And you never know, this is basically a 50-year-old gas tank. So we don't want to get too cute. And like I said, I'll do that for about 5 or 10 minutes until I'm happy that we've scratched and it's going to loosen up any contaminated stuff in there. Now what I'm doing now is I'm rinsing out all of the, and the screws are still in there. I still have to get them out. I guess I'll have to get a magnet or something. but the stuff that's coming out of there is kind of dirty and gritty, and again, the biggest area I'm worried about when I do this, I want to get plenty of that material in here if I can. And again, you can probably see it's getting a little bit cleaner each time. But they want it to be rough. They don't want it to be smooth like glass. Now, because of the shape of the gas cap on this, it's difficult to get the screws out, of course, because that cap sits down in there. I'm going to have to go get a magnet. I have a magnet on the end of a stick, kind of a tool. While I'm going to get the magnet, I want the rest of the cleaner to drain out. I guess most of it will drain out. I have the petcock on. And when we do this, there's a very tricky way you keep the sealer out of the petcock. When you're done, it says to turn it upside down and then blow air in through the petcock, and that clears whatever's in the petcock. Well, we're going to see how that works out. Again, because this is a 50-year-old tank, and pretty much we don't want to compromise it in any way. I'd like to make this like a brand new tank when I'm done with the finishing on it. Now, depending on the gas tank shape and whatnot, getting the last of the screws out can be a little tricky. This is a magnet. This is an ordinary mechanics tool, and you can shake them till they're down at the bottom, of course. Hopefully, and the cap is steel. Let's see if yep. And that's probably the best way to get the last of the sheetrock screws out of there. Make sure the sheetrock screws you put in, or if you put washers or nuts, that they're steel, not stainless steel. Now I got an ordinary little wire brush just to get some of the loose stuff off around here, because we're going to want to, obviously when we do the cosmetic part of this, I'll polish up the cap, make it like brand new, maybe better than brand new, who knows. But I want to put the Gorilla Tape on here when I follow in the directions, and I have I think an okay way to do this, since we're just trying to seal it, but this will get all loose stuff off. Now there's still just a little bit of water in there, and what I'll do is I'll let the compressor build up, use some compressed air, because I want that to be totally dry before we mix the epoxy and do the seal. What I'll do is the next step, and that looks like you got most of it out. What I want to do is the next step, I want to just hang this up by a heating vent in a house. Since it's in the middle of the winter, it's freezing cold. If it was summer, I'd want to put it out in the bright sun. I'd like because I want to warm the part as much as I possibly can. The warm will let the epoxy be more capillary and get down into all the little nooks and crannies and everything here. So, and as I said, this is really a part that getting the tank all sealed before we do what will amount to be a lot of hours of cosmetic work. It's really important to get that sealed before we move on to the next step. Now, if for instance you have a little problem getting the last few drops of water out, I used a siphon. The siphon, just it's like siphoning gas. And then I thought, it'd be a better way. I'll just pack a microfiber down in there. That might even get up some of the goop that's in there. And it looks perfectly dry right now, but we'll just give it a few minutes up by the heating vent. Anything left in there, hopefully, and more important, that tank has to be perfectly dry before we go to the next step. Dry, and it would be to our advantage to have it a little bit warmer than ambient temperature. Now, one final inspection before we mix epoxy. I want to look inside, make sure it's perfectly dry, and it is. I want to make sure there's nothing that looks like something I'd want to repair before we mix epoxy. And what I'll do is, just before I mix it, I'm just going to warm the tank up just a little bit. Any moisture that's on the inside of it, hopefully will, just come out, that's for sure. And right now we don't care about the outside of the tank. Once it's sealed, doing the cosmetic part is a whole nother job. But any epoxy you ever work with, the warm will make it more capillary, thinner, in other words, more watery instead of jello-y. It'll penetrate better. If you use epoxy on a freezing cold day, it doesn't really penetrate. On a warm day, it penetrates better. That's a fact of all epoxies, actually, and paint too. But anyway, it looks like we're ready to mix some epoxy here. So we started out, that looked pretty rough in there. I'm not sure it looks a lot better, but it has to be rough. The screws have etched it all up, and most importantly, it's dry and the tank is warm. And this is my preferred way to pre-warm any part. Now, of course, just the heat. This is a 100-year-old house. The heat is on almost all the time. And again, if this were a summer day, it would even be easier because I just have to put it outside, and that would be, even simpler. But then once we know this is sealed and it's going to have to dry 24 hours, then we'll go ahead and put this type of a finish, a really nice, high-quality finish on it. Now, from reading the directions, this is the most important thing. If you are not going to use the whole can, in which case we're not going to use the whole can, we could probably do 2 gas tanks with the amount you have. Now, what I have is a glass piece with a line on it. So what I want to do, this is really high-tech. I'm looking for about half. That looks like about half. Okay. That's probably, and when I say close enough, I mean it isn't a grain scale measurement. And that looks like about half. A little bit more. Any material that's 2 to 1, like epoxies that are 2 to 1, 5-minute epoxy, not ultra critical. That's half. That's half. Now they say 2 things you can do after 24 hours. You of course can put a second coat on, but you want to do it while the material's still sticky. Also, and I might have misunderstood it the first time I read the directions. Here's another trick. Any epoxy you stir, you're really not supposed to stir it with a wooden stick. What happens, the wood in some resins absorbs some of the catalyst chemicals. So there are resins, and I wanted to show this, that's not a good thing. Take an old screwdriver, and they say mix it for 2 minutes. Well, because you're using up your shelf life here. But I can guarantee you, from being in the sad day that you go to take a part out of a mold and the resin hasn't cured, and you screwed something up. And another thing, whenever you're mixing any kind of resin like this, they said in the directions they would like the tank and the resin to be the same temperature, and that temperature should be between 70 and 80 degrees, let's say. Well, that's what it is in my house right now. What I did, I turned up the heat to 72, because if it gets too warm, if you start using a hairdryer, the material thins out too much. And by the way, they make this. I had spoken to a friend in Florida, Ray Straub, and he had a tank done, and they can put, there's some of these tank sealers, the ones Caswell makes, have a color in them. So they actually, when you open a gas tank, you can see what color's inside. I'm not sure that's important to me. And I'm not sure it's important to Chuck when you're restoring a 50-year-old YETMAN, but I have to say, having that video of the real bike all in one piece there, right at the end of the 67 Canadian Nationals, you can see it leaning up on a fence. That's pretty nostalgic stuff. And you really do want to mix this well. You really don't want to compromise. This is the part you don't want to compromise. Another thing I found, you really should mix it in a glass container. Some of the plastic containers, there's chemicals, and you never know what chemicals, but I've mixed little mixing cups that the epoxy melts the mixing cup. Some of the high-tech resins like Huntsman and Ippon. But anyway, we'll see how this works. I'm real excited about seeing how this works, because in my case, and 4 of my motorcycles are over 25 years old. You never know when they're going to leak. And this can really save you a lot of grief. But again, getting a tank clean, getting it etched, getting the material mixed properly, I think once you do that, read the directions, of course. We never read the directions. Why am I lying like that? Okay, now that's mixed as well as I think it will be. And I wouldn't want to mix it for 20 minutes. I'm going to lose some of my working time. So here I am here. Let's get this out. Let me get the gas tank. It's nice to do this without a camera cut if you can. Make sure the petcock's shut off. When we're done, we'll blow some air in there while it's upside down. Now they tell you to seal a cap on this with a piece of saran wrap and a rubber band. I'm going to try to use Gorilla Tape only because I've had such good luck with Gorilla Tape in the past. And I'm pouring the whole thing. This is a half a can. This is a little under a 3-gallon tank. But again, it's not the volume of the tank, it's the square inches of surface area that matter. Now, to do this, I got to take my gloves off. I'll get a new pair of gloves. Let me get a, and this is another, I wanted to do this without a camera cut. So, because a lot of times when you see an edit in a thing like this, you think, well, how long did that take? And did that take an hour or 15 minutes or what? But we have to seal the top, and you could do it with, maybe we'll even do it with saran wrap and a rubber band, but I just love Gorilla Tape. Since I've been using it, I found so many things to use it for. And this was my plan. I wanted to see if this would work. And actually, if a little bit comes out, it's not going to be the end of the world, that's for sure. This is not that kind of a job, and we're going to resurface and refinish the outside of this anyway, so let me just, if you've never used real Gorilla Tape, it is some thrilling material to use. And if you want it to be cute or you want to impress your friends, you could, of course, cut a piece and trim that all off. Not necessary for what we're doing. Now the trick would be, while that material's in there and the petcocks, we want to really get it. I'll spend about 5 minutes. I won't spend it all on camera, but just rotating this all around. They say in 5 minutes you'll have it done. Well, maybe not right. We'll find out. So I'll do the rest of this off camera. I'm just going to walk it around. Then when I'm done, when I come back to this in 5 minutes or so, I'll pull the tape off and turn it upside down and let it drain into a garbage can, whatever's extra. Because of course anything you put in the tank is now making the tank smaller and smaller too at some point. If you put 3 gallons of sealer into a 3-gallon tank, you have a solid tank. Now I got that sitting over a garbage can with a bag in it, and whatever now drips out, any extra that drips out, we'll just go into the garbage and we'll dispose of it. By having it upside down during the dry cycle, I've blown some compressed air in there, and that would hopefully clear that we don't have any of the sealer in the petcock. I guess one of the ways you could do this, you could take the petcock off, but then you would not have the seal around the petcock that maybe they want. Anyway, I've heard good things about this material. Now that I've gotten to use it, it's relatively easy to use. I don't think this is out of the realm of anybody's ability to do this. Make sure the tank is clean. Make sure you mix the material the way they say. Read the directions carefully. Nothing intimidating here. And I'm going to go over to the buffing wheel right now and clean up the cap. The cap has a few scratches in it. That's real easy to do, but I'll just mention again, I think this is probably the premium product. And I wanted to put the address on once again. Or if you have to look it up on the internet, here's the address. We always like to do that on our videos. And oh, so here's the colors. Yeah, there's other blue and red, and I guess if you have a need for that. or that would float your boat. Here it is. Here's the information. And I would certainly think this is something not outside the range of ability for anybody. And we wanted to give Chuck a little cherry on a Sunday here, clean this up. The little brackets that hold the tank before I do the cosmetic work. And by the way, this will all be on future videos for people that are interested in watching me slave away like this. And there really isn't a lot that's not rewarding about doing this kind of work, because what we're doing is bringing a 50-year-old motorcycle, a YETMAN Honda 305, back into what I hope get it back on the racetrack soon. And hopefully we'll get some video of it at the races next year. Now, I don't want to over polish it either, because we're not trying to make a this wax on my glove here, but that'll be when that's polished, and I just wipe it off with a microfiber. That'll be really beautiful. Nice cherry on a Sunday. Now, I'm not sure if you can see the final. Once that's cured out, that leaves a relatively thick coating. And according to the directions, you would not want to get the tank more than 80 degrees, because it would make the material too thin and too capillary. Well, I can see that goes on relatively thick, but we're going to do exactly what the directions say, and that seems to have worked pretty well. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll try to tack on a couple seconds of the video we have of this bike at the 1967. It's not a race footage. He just the bike is parked up against a barn door, but it's nice to be working on something. There's not a lot of things from 1967 still around. And I hope you've enjoyed all the videos. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, like I said, this is my passion, and I do enjoy sharing it. So thanks for watching.